Hi, I wanted to make a video about perfectionism and sharing my own story of perfectionism, how it began, and what I've been doing in my life to help myself resolve it. I also want to say that perfectionism often leads to things like type A personality, workaholic, and then even experiencing things like imposter syndrome and things like that when you start living your purpose later on in life. And so it's another thing that is one of the leading factors behind a lot of chronic fatigue syndrome are people who have perfectionism tendencies. And so I'll explain all of that as well. My perfectionism began because as a child, I had a pretty tumultuous life, but I did have a grandmother who, in her best attempts to try to help me with that, would always say, "Oh, Kathleen, you're such the good one. Oh, you're my perfect baby. You're the good one." And I had a sister who was always getting into trouble, and she'd say, "And your sister's the bad one. You're the good one, she's the bad one." And she would often withhold her love from my sister, and with me, she would give me a lot more attention. And so I was terrified that if I did anything bad that she found out about, that I would also become the bad one. And then I also had a lot of religious programming that I was taught very dysfunctional messages like if you're bad, you're going to hell, and if you're good, you're going to heaven, and so you better be good. And that scared me to death. I was always afraid of losing my grandmother's love and going to hell. And so as a child, I really tried hard to be good as you can be. I pleased everybody. I never spoke up to anybody. I tried not to make anyone mad. And then when it came to school, I was trying to be as perfect as possible, the perfect student, the perfect athlete, perfect, while all the while living in a very dysfunctional home that I was very ashamed about. And I was actually secretly imperfect. I did bad things. I remember cheating on a test in second grade. I remember stealing things from the store when I was in elementary school. I remember doing lots of things that you are not supposed to do, but a lot of kids do. I remember being mean to my sister, and I didn't want anyone to know, so I hid all of that. I never shared any of my tendencies. I never shared anything bad that I did with boys when I got older. I was hiding all of it. I was terrified that if my family or anyone found out that I did bad things, that I would be unlovable and frankly go to hell. So I just suppressed. That suppression created a gap in my psyche, and that gap in my psyche led to more of it, my ego driving myself into more perfectionism, more stress, more workaholism, and stuffing all of these emotions. And eventually I ended up having burnout and crashed and got sick and all of the things, which is a classic setup for chronic fatigue and other illnesses, which I teach about a lot in Primal Trust. So what do you do about it? Well, the truth is you've got stuff in there that's very shameful. So perfectionism is driven by shame. You're ashamed of who you are. You're ashamed that you're not good enough. You're ashamed you'll be outcast, rejected, etc. So the first step is about recognizing that there are parts of you that feel very ashamed of who they are and what they've done. And you've got to meet those parts of you. We often call that parts work. And Primal Trust, internal family systems use the same term. Inner child healing is another term where you're acknowledging what's in there and you start being willing to feel the shame. So this is somatic work where you have to gain tools and practices to be able to sit with the shame instead of distract and try to pretend it's not there, so that you can close the gap in your psyche between who you pretend to be and who you actually feel like. So that's been a big part of it. Another big part of it is being transparent with people. The more that you're willing to acknowledge the things that you've done, the things that are imperfect about you, the more that you will recognize that people aren't going to reject you. In fact, that's been a big part of my own healing as a coach and a platform leader. I try to be as transparent as I can. And every time I am with my community of saying, hey, I'm imperfect in this way, they still love me. And in fact, I feel like they love me even more because I am transparent. And that also helps to heal lifelong shame. And lastly, I have a group of core women that we get together and we share our shadows and we help each other through different processes of shadow work and integrating. And I find that to be one of the most powerful things because I allow myself to be seen in a very vulnerable way and witnessed. And they're often feeling the same way, like, oh my gosh, me too. I have those same thoughts and feelings, or I've done that too. And it's incredibly healing. So the antidote to perfectionism is through being able to feel and meet your shame and to do sometimes parts work and also have a group of people that you can trust to be vulnerable with, to share these parts of you that you've hidden for your life. So I hope that helps. That's been my journey of perfectionism, and I hope that it helps you with yours.